My BMW is leaking oil, coolant, even oil into the coolant, and I don't have the time or the money to take it to the shop. So the question is, can you really fix a BMW in your driveway? I'm no mechanic. This is my only car. A 10-year-old diesel BMW with almost 155,000 miles, and it's being a stereotype. See, I've got the basic tools, a leaky oil cooler, and just enough patience to see if I can actually pull this off. No lifts, no workshop, just me, the driveway, and whatever milkshake comes out of it. I mean, it can't be that bad, right? It's not looking good. It's not like together. There's still coolants, there's whatever that is, and then there's oil. So it's separate. Even though there's oil in my expansion tank, it's not coming directly from the engine. It's getting in from somewhere else. And that somewhere else is the oil cooler. On these N47s, the oil cooler is actually liquid cooled. It uses the car's own cooling system to keep oil temps in check. Inside this housing sits the thermostat, the oil filter, and the heat exchanger. One side carries hot oil, the other side coolant, pulling out the heat and sending it through the car's radiator. The scary part? If it's just the gaskets, that's a pretty cheap and affordable fix. But if it's the housing itself, the thermostat, or the heat exchanger, that's a few grand in parts. And that's a few grand I simply do not have. So the number one thing we need to do is remove this electrical box. And before we do that, we need to disconnect the battery. Next, we can remove the electronics box that houses the ECU. So after disconnecting the battery, T25 Torx bit, and just get everything out. Messing with the electrical box is always scary, but it's just a few clips, a few bolts that holds the tray in, and we finally have space to see this oil cooler. Another thing going through my mind is I hope nothing needs coating, but I doubt it. Alright, so I'm going to put this pan under the car because these coolant hoses need to come out next. Right down there is your oil cooler. These are where your coolant line goes in, so this whole unit now needs to be removed. This is where your oil filter goes in, and this is your dipstick for your transmission. Oh yeah, let's try and get... There's one bolt right at the bottom, and it's a few more on the top. So next, we're gonna try and take out this entire unit, because I know it's possible without taking out the intake like the M Sports. Here's where things started to go wrong. Other than another set of hoses that I could not see, and it being an E-Volt, of course, trust the Germans to make something simple complicated. That's when it hit me. I'm not getting this oil cooler out in one piece. And it being my first time doing this, I won't lie, I was starting to panic a little bit. Now I had to take the part out section by section. The heat exchanger, thermostat, and then the cooling block. And the thermostat's plastic, and every video that I've watched said the same thing. These things can snap easily after a few heat cycles, and as I said, I can't afford to break anything. The deeper I went in the engine bay, the more oil I saw, and the more worried I started to get. With a few professional taps and some muscle, I finally cracked the bolts on the heat exchanger, and got it out. The thermostat though, that one demanded patience. Every move had to be careful, slow, and one wrong pull, and I could be back at square one. But eventually, it came free. So far, I've removed everything in the way. The heat exchanger, the thermostat, and I've had no issues. But it had taken me 5 hours. 5 hours just to get here, and mainly because I couldn't see one bolt. Now all that was left was the block itself, and at this moment, my heart was racing. Because if it wasn't just a gasket, it was the block itself. And I had no idea what I was going to do if it was that. And I've tried everything at this point, every angle, every extension. My tools were just a little bit too short and everything else just kept getting in the way. Until... Oh my god! Oh, it's out! Oh my god! After 45 minutes of wiggling, twisting and praying I didn't break anything, I finally got the oil cooler block out. And honestly, I was shocked I didn't damage a single thing. But that moment of relief didn't last long, because now I could finally inspect everything. And straight away, I saw it. The thing I was hoping not to find. The bottom of the cooler was damaged. Then the problems just kept hitting me. I'd bought the wrong parts. The cooler gasket was correct, but the rubber seals weren't. That kit was for the oil filter housing, which was replaced a few thousand miles ago and isn't even leaking.
To make it worse, I had no parts cleaner. At this point, it was 6.5 hours in, everywhere was closed, so just like that, I was done for the day.
Day 3. Yesterday, the seals that I had to replace the oil cooler gaskets with, one of them was right, the other one was wrong.
And the wind picked up. What I was basically saying was I had to return the old kit. Turns out I needed 2 new kits instead of 1. So that's a little bit more money spent. I also got some parts cleaner so I can service the cooler, and more importantly, inspect that block, because if that block is damaged, it's not just a third trip back to the parts store, but it's making me look like an idiot, spending money I don't have, and begging my uncle for another lift, because like I said, this is my only car. So I scrubbed the block clean, and at first my heart sank. It looked bad, like really bad, until I realized the damage was around the ports and stopped millimeters just before the gasket seal. I put the gasket on and it lined up perfectly. Safe to say I was relieved. However, the gasket itself was another story. It fits. It just wouldn't stay put while I put the cooler back on the car. So here's me in the heat for almost an hour trying to line this thing up that took forever to remove, now refused to go back in. To make it worse, one wrong move and I could bend the gasket, and if that happened, I would definitely need a new one. So I couldn't let it slip, not even once.
And finally, after about almost 2 hours, we have the oil cooler back on. Everything is tightened up and ready to go. So now we just gotta put all of this back together and we're done.
At least that's what I thought. I was ready to put everything back together, pour some coolant in, and finally call it done. But this is a 10-year-old German sedan, and nothing could ever be that simple. Even though I somehow managed to get everything back in place, I was about to be hit with 2 more problems before I could ever call this finished.
Pro tip: don't disconnect your battery and close the boot, because there's no keyhole, there's no seat release. So what I did was I pulled the seat forward because one clip is stuck. I reached in the back of the boot, grabbed this oil can, put it up here, and I'm going to make my way right there and try and reconnect this battery. Now let's hope I don't get stuck in this. Well, I'm inside and I just realized I'm struggling. For what? I have no idea. Oh, hello, sausage. Oh my god.
I wish I were making this up. After the whole battery fiasco and wrestling the seats back in, which by the way, that stuck clip finally came out, I filled it up with coolant and immediately we have problems. Everything we just did, yeah, it all has to come back out just to find where this coolant leak was coming from. At least this time I knew what I was doing. After disconnecting the battery again, and no, I did not close the boot this time, I pulled out the electrical box and there it was. I'd forgotten a hose. So I popped it in, put the box back, folded her up, and started the car. You thought that was the end, didn't you? No. See, almost 145,000 miles says not yet. Now that the oil cooler gasket is sealing properly, we have a new weak spot, the expansion tank. At this point, I just took it out, cleaned it, put it back, but that still didn't work. And I thought it was maybe the bottle, like it had a crack on it. But after digging online, I found out that it was actually the valve itself. Older BMWs used a screw, and so did the replacement parts for an F30. And in 2016, BMW went back to the screw, which means mine was just stuck open. So I pushed it closed permanently with a screwdriver and bled the system through the cap. And finally, I could take it for a drive to answer the question, can you fix a BMW in your driveway? And after 3 days, 2 trips to the parts store, countless internet forums, forgetting hoses, learning the harder way about not closing the boot when you disconnect the battery, busting your arm open on every sharp edge in that engine bay and burning in the shower, all while dealing with issue after issue from one German diva. Yeah, you can. And I'd do it again because I love this car and I've got a lot more to get done. So hit that like and subscribe and come see what it's really like owning a high mileage N47. Who knows, you might just want one yourself.